Hey all, I'm Teddy. Welcome to another episode of Don't V LOOKUP, the podcast where we engage with leading experts and practitioners in the field of e-commerce, exploring how they leverage data to drive pivotal business decisions. By the end of our chat today, hopefully you can see that the sky is not falling in our industry. Everything will be okay. Today's guest, someone who I'm really excited to introduce. He wears many hats in e-commerce. His name is Mike DeSantis. He's the director of business operations at Doris Dev, renowned product design agency based in New York City, and he's also the head of ops and marketing at Canopy, makers of humidifiers, shower heads, and diffusers for beauty and wellness. Mike, it's a pleasure to have you on today. Thanks for carving out time during what I'm sure is a crazy, action-packed post Black Friday, Cyber Monday period for you.
Oh yeah. Thanks for the intro, Teddy, and of course, happy to be here. I mean, we do definitely action-packed time of year across the board. I think it's only going to get busier for us for the next couple of months. So I would say Black Friday, Cyber Monday is really just the start of a 3 or 4 month long opportunity that Canopy has to really sell as many humidifiers as we possibly can.
Yeah, I know it's such a pivotal and high growth time period for you. On that note, would love to just give the audience a sense of where you came in at Canopy and sort of the story of growth that you brought to the table.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think maybe it'd be worth to take a very brief trip down memory lane. I started my career in D2C at a company called Raiden, which was a smart luggage startup. Launched around the same time as Away. Got slotted in there as a CX associate, basically just managing tickets in Zendesk at the time. Gorgeous didn't exist. And quickly grew into running our CX team, leading supply chain and ops at that business. Really got the opportunity to cut my teeth across those two pieces of kind of e-commerce in general. Obviously, a lot's changed since then. Like, I also helped manage the website. It was built on Solidus. Shopify wasn't proliferated yet. And as my time at Raiden ended, I started doing some freelance marketing work. So digital advertising, really like ad arbitrage for a handful of publications actually. So got the opportunity to get into the back end of Facebook, figure that out, really kind of like dig into the details there, drive a ton of traffic to a ton of different websites, and had really sizable budgets, which was an awesome opportunity to really kind of tinker around with things. I then hopped over to an agency called High Tide, which is a pretty well-known branding agency. So kind of got to spend a lot more time doing 0 to 1 work. It was, a lot of new brands were coming into the market. A lot of funding was coming into the space. So, really interesting opportunities there. Funny enough, like I worked on branding for Fable, which is a Doris client that, we've had for 6 years. So, everything kind of stays in our little ecosystem. And then joined Doris in March of 2020. And the intention there was for me to kind of come on, help manage some of our clients, as well as kind of lead a lot of the 0 to 1 work on the Canopy side of things. So kind of given my background and jack of all trades, master of none, kind of I guess background. We kind of kicked that process off really in earnest in March of 2020. Literally, first day we started, we all sat down was the day New York shut down from COVID. So had nothing but free time to really like dive into Canopy head first. And I mean, we spent the kind of the 6 months leading up to launch, which was in October of 2020, getting all the key pieces that we needed in place. That looked like finding branding agencies to execute on brand, develop our website, finding our paid search and social partners, email and SMS, PR agencies. Really, the goal was keep the team as lean as possible while kind of bolting on experts in kind of deep and specific fields to make sure that we had a fully functional machine that we could once it was time to kind of turn that engine over and get the ball rolling there. So yeah, I mean, early days of Canopy was really just myself, Justin, Lucas, the two co-founders of Doris and Canopy, and Eric Nair, who's our CMO and has been with us from the start. But yeah, so getting Canopy off the ground, I think kind of some inside baseball there is our director of marketing always tells me, if you guys had launched this business in March, you might have quit before you knew it was a hit. Really seasonal business, which we kind of learned in our first year, but launching in October, that's when people really start using humidifiers. That's when the heat turns on in a lot of people's apartments, so people start to dry out. And the overall approach was really, let's take a legacy product that hasn't been innovated on in a really extended period of time, and reposition it. Right, that was the end goal. There's nothing truly groundbreaking technologically about the Canopy humidifier. It's the positioning that is the winner, and like finding product market fit really right out of the gate. I think the kind of initial win with Canopy was we stepped into the market. We had we had our creative, we had our copy, and we realized pretty quickly that we got it right essentially on the first try with those things, which I think is a really key and unique situation to find ourselves in. And what that led to, especially in the the first year or so, was we just need to hit the bullseye. We just need to hit the center of the target. We know exactly what we need to say and what's resonating with our customer. We didn't need to take this approach of variating every single asset a million different ways, writing a million different pieces of copy, and doing really intense A/B testing at the start, which was an awesome situation to be in. So because we really didn't have to spend a bunch of extra time, energy, and resources in kind of that, okay, let's try and figure out how to make this thing work phase. So it was really awesome. And we came out in 2020, launched the beginning of October. We did over $1 million in sales in those first 3 months. So we're really excited heading into 2021. Saw an immense amount of opportunity. Started hiring people in to manage things that I could no longer effectively manage fractionally. Brought in a head of CX. Brought in someone to manage our warehouses and kind of inventory and planning. Brought in a director of growth as well, who could actually spend all of their time on that work. And since then I've really continued to build out and grow that team. We've continued working with a lot of our original agency partners in the email and SMS space and paid search and social. Over time, we've kind of turned over some teams on the PR side of things, on the e-com side of things. Have hired in an e-com manager who lives, eats, sleeps, and breathes the site. We've brought in a director of retail who's focused on brick and mortar. How do we get into additional stores? How do we get into additional retailers? We launched on Amazon this year and have brought in resources to help support that vertical of the business. So it's kind of crazy looking back now 3+ years on the entire process, and seeing where we're at, seeing how big the team's become to some extent. Maybe 15 people now, from 3 fractional people and 1 full-time employee. It's been a pretty wild ride, but I think I guess one other piece of the puzzle worth noting, and definitely a function of kind of the background of Canopy being incubated by Doris Dev, which just to reiterate, you mentioned is a product development and design company. We've supported a bunch of different D2C brands in building their first product and then expanding that product line from there on out, and really doing it end to end, from industrial design through mechanical engineering, into sourcing, supplier validation, supply chain setup end to end, and really managing and operating those supply chains over time. We've always viewed product development as a really major growth lever for any D2C business. So this year we we launched a shower head, a filtered shower head, to kind of expand the Canopy product assortment, and we'll continue to launch new products heading into next year. We have a lot of new products in the hopper that are coming down the pipe, and I think that's like a core pillar of the growth strategy that we have in pushing this thing forward.
Yeah, that's great, Mike. Thanks for giving me the story of growth, and I think that's always an important first question to ask. What's so interesting, I think, about Doris Dev and Canopy and the relationship that you outlined there is the foundation of product design being one of the growth levers that you have. I don't know if every operator or brand in the space can point to product innovation and design as a pillar of growth like you guys can. I want to understand more, like, what do you do in a day in and day out from
Yeah.
a product design perspective to make Canopy products better, the humidifier, the shower head, and also maybe just like give me your definition of what product design is in the non-digital, in the physical context.
Well, yeah, for sure. Yeah, so I mean, as far as like product development goes in general, right? Product development, as far as I'm concerned, is a never-ending process, right? There's no end point of product development. No one has ever made a perfect product. It will not happen. Apple releases new products every year for a reason, because there's always something that can be made better one way or another, right? So, I think about product development as a treadmill. That is what it is. Like you can launch product, you can push it out into the market, but you're going to need to iterate over time, and not doing so is, honestly can be a big challenge for a business. There's during a product development process, like stepping into a product design process in general too, with clients or with Canopy, generally we're looking for a brief, like what exactly is it you're trying to accomplish? Are there pain points that you're trying to address? How are you trying to position this product? How much do you want to sell it for, right? Like all of these things are relevant as we step into design. We're working so far upstream that we have the ability to impact what the end margin is ultimately going to end up looking like, right? You really need to, 18 months before you actually get to selling a product, be thinking about, okay, how am I going to price this thing? Like, am I going to go into retail with it? If so, can the margins support that? Like, so I think as far as product design goes, you need to not just be thinking about, okay, what are the pain points I'm specifically trying to solve with this new product, but it's also like, what's the long-term impact going to be on the business, and how can I plan for that as far in advance as possible? And then the entire process is about trade-offs, right? So you step into design, you start to really think through the details of the product, the form factor, how all of it's going to come together from a mass production perspective. Like how can we make this product effectively and efficiently? And you may realize, like, oh, that feature, that clasp is really premium feeling, but it's going to add $2 to my BOM, and I don't want to do that right now. You may find that, I can, like a tactical example on the Canopy side of things is we have had some issues with kind of like lint collection in the grate above the fan.
Interesting.
And that's not something that we really unearthed during product testing, during the entire product development process. It's something that we've learned by getting 100,000 plus humidifiers out into the world and having people use them time and time again. Now, granted, this is a function of not dusting around your humidifier and a fan sucking all the dust around your humidifier up into it. But it does mean, okay, how are we going to iterate on the product to allow customers to fix that problem themselves, and it not being like, we actually need to just send you a new humidifier to remedy the issue. The implication there is we are in the process of adding a feature to the humidifier where you can remove the grate very easily, just like with a lift of a finger, so that you can clean that piece out, because we know it's not, we can tell people to clean around their humidifier, but that's not a real solve at the end of the day, right? We needed a product-based solve for that, and there's an infinite amount of turns that you can do in a product development process. You can try and think through everything, but there are unknown unknowns that are going to present themselves at some point in time, and like learning to be comfortable with that and understanding that just because you launched a product doesn't mean that you're not going to iterate on it is like a really big piece of the puzzle. And then I think as far as like product line extensions goes, and using product as a lever for growth, it's really a function of knowing your customer, like as well as you possibly can, and understanding what resonates with them and where they're willing to like continue that journey with you, right? For us, that's most likely going to look like two things. We have filters in most of our products, and we have an aroma component with most of our products. We use essential oils as an opportunity for upsell, an opportunity for partnership. Obviously, you're something you're super familiar with, but it's an awesome lever for us to connect with other brands and say, hey, we'll take the process of like co-developing this scent together. We'll leverage that and do co-marketing around it and send out email blasts to each other's customers about it, et cetera, et cetera. So any new product that we build is most likely going to come with a filter or some sort of replaceable element and the ability to integrate that aroma piece. And it's really about like building a broader system that isn't just product by product specific, that I think is like can be a really compelling story to be able to tell customers, and it's cohesive.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I love your allusion to the treadmill. What I'm most interested about today, Mike, too, is like understanding what are the data and research inputs in development, and then once you bring it into market, that help spin that treadmill per se.
Yeah, no, of course. And I whenever we start with a product design, when we're stepping into industrial design at the beginning, the first phase of work is foundational strategy, right? The goal there is for us to go out and really become experts in the marketplace. What are the existing products that people really love? What are the existing products that people really hate? Where are there products in other categories that have components or use cases that are adjacent that we could potentially borrow either design language from or engineering solutions from, and use that to like build something that is net new and interesting and unique. So I mean, that is a key piece of the process. I'll also say this process is made best by major participants in that process, right? Like it's one thing for us to go back to the drawing board and come up with some ideas. It's another thing for somebody to come to us and say, hey, here's like my foundation. We go back and do our foundation and build something even stronger as a result of it that we can then use to start concepting different design languages and then ultimately end up refining those designs until we get to a finished product. And I think there is like a big leap of faith component in this, right? Like you have to have yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. I'm laughing thinking about like 15 random consumers in a all white room with like a Canopy humidifier in the middle in Newark, New Jersey, right? And you guys are on the verge, right, of going to market with this thing. Is that the reality? Like, tell us how you get signal into what might work after you've already done a ton of development work.
Well,
How do you go from gut instinct to actual product, I guess, too?
Yeah, no, it's a really fair question, and there are a couple of ways to do it. But I think it's a function of time and money, right? At the end of the day. For net new brands, my general recommendation is get to market as fast as you possibly can so that you can start iterating quicker, right? That is kind of the name of the game. It's also, you need to start generating revenue. Like if all you're doing is spending money trying to build the perfect product, right? Going back to what I said earlier, like no one's ever going to build a perfect product. Some people get really caught, they get paralyzed during the process because they're like, oh, well, what if I don't think of something that like leads to, an issue with a product or the customer experience, whatever. It's like, that's probably going to happen. Get product into people's hands as quickly as possible and gather feedback. That said, some people take an approach, right? I mean, generally during a process, we're going to be doing a bunch of prototyping. We're going to start getting samples from suppliers. And the deeper into the process we get, the larger the quantity of those samples are, the more that we're starting to facilitate user testing, right? Generally, that's on our partner side of things, right? We're like, hey, we're going to have 50 units coming in. We're going to do some internal testing on that. You guys need to do some testing, potentially share it with family, friends, other people in the business, to start to gather feedback, because different people are going to interact with products in different ways. That you might, you walk up to something and you're like, this is really intuitive, and somebody else walks up to it and is like, I can't figure out how to use this thing at all. And like figuring out how to bridge the gap between those things is really fun, and oftentimes something that can potentially be done before you actually mass produce a product. Other people will take the approach of, hey, with those 50 units, I'm going to run a focus group, right? And sometimes, depending on the type of product, that could be a focus group that needs a month or 2 months of time. The implication there then being, okay, well, now that's 2 additional months before you're starting to generate revenue. And if it leads to major design changes, that means going back to the drawing board and redesigning some pieces of the puzzle, getting samples again, testing again, right? So you can see how quickly like time can start to add up in these processes. So my general approach is get product into consumers' hands as quickly as possible, and leverage their insights to start iterating, right? And that's why you have a strong CX team, and that's why in Gorgeous you need to have detailed tagging, you need to have issue trackers, you need to understand, okay, how many times is this issue presenting itself based on the number of units that we've sent out, and at what threshold that starts to become statistically relevant for you to invest time, energy, effort, money into making.
Yeah, that's what I'm really interested in circling in on too, right? Like once it's in market, tell us like what the tools are, right? What are you using to get that market signal, and how has it maybe changed over the years too, as you've iterated more with Canopy and then with Doris Dev's series of clients?
Yeah, for sure. So I think that at the start it was very simple, straightforward tagging, me and like our CX agent managing the inbox day to day, right? And
Yeah,
as we brought in a director of CX, like professionalizing that process a bit more. So what that looks like for us now is we have a robust set of tagging that we do in Gorgeous. We export all of that data. We definitely use pivot tables and V lookups to to aggregate all of that stuff together. We now can really drill in on product defects or product issues. Maybe an issue is not a function of the broader product. Maybe it's an issue with a defective production run or something along those lines. So like really like the more crisp you can get your data over time, the more you can understand, okay, that humidifier came from that lot of production. Did we see this issue rear its ugly head multiple times during that round of production? Or is that spread out across multiple purchase orders that we're seeing this? And is this something that people are like happy to accept a new humidifier if an issue is presenting itself for, and they remain a happy customer? Or is this something that disqualifies them as a customer moving forward? They're like, I don't want to interface with Canopy anymore. Like, do they become detractors from an MPS core perspective? And I think like that, like honing in on that is a bit of an art, right? Like figuring out like what is the general vibe of any sort of product challenges that you see, to understand when it's time to start investing in making those modifications to the product, whether that be minor on running changes that happen in between production runs, which happens all the time, right? Like almost every single production run, there's like something that can be done better for one reason or another, on the assembly line. So as far as the tools that we use, it is like really still Excel more than anything else, right? It's like we're tracking it every single week. A big report gets sent around internally to kind of, hey, here are the issues we've saw crop up this week. are there any things that are, statistically relevant here? Like, is this an abnormal report for one reason or another? Is there something new that's presenting itself? And like, I would say that like keeping a finger on that pulse on a week over week basis is valuable, right? Because it is going to be like a lot of these, any product issue that you run into is going to be like a lagging indicator of stuff that, you could have a bunch more units in the warehouse that have a challenge. So trying to get out in front of that as quickly as possible is super helpful. I'll note, one other like minorly shameless plug here. Doris Dev incubated a company called Factored Quality, which is a managed services SaaS platform for booking quality control inspectors anywhere in the world. And, we are firm believers that like the best way to build a good relationship with a customer is to invest heavily in product and make it sure it's high quality product. And, a really simple way to de-risk challenges with products is to make sure you have robust quality control in place on your factory floor. So as a product's going through mass production, units are getting pulled off the line, they're getting tested, they're getting inspected, making sure that there's nothing cropping up that, could be easily fixed or, not shipped to the US if it's a big enough issue, right? Like, there's so many downstream implications on that. So I do think that's another big piece of the puzzle. It's not just, it's like test product before it gets in customers' hands, and then keep track of the issues that are showing up to make sure that, you have a really clear picture end to end on that overall experience.
Yeah, that's super fascinating. I think when you're collating sort of the customer feedback data, is it just coming from like email and Gorgeous? Are there other data sources like, every once in a while, a brand will have like a sponsored ad on Meta, and on the comments, it'll say like, this broke, it's not even working.
Yeah.
How are you guys flagging that, both for product feedback, but also, I guess, for even like ad optimization or ad hygiene? I'm always interested in hearing how maybe other channels ultimately become microphones for consumers to either complain or rave about a product. So how do you collate all that data together at the end of the day? It seems like a pretty challenging feat.
Yeah, that is the director of CX. Like any like customer touch point, like she's managing that piece of the puzzle, right? Making sure that all of that data is getting flowed in. Obviously, reviews are leveraged as well, to inform all of this information. Like if we're getting, I'll give you an example of something that's a product
Yeah.
feature that is, people experience as a product defect, which I think is really interesting. And like, to my point of like something that to us is like, oh, this is so obvious. Of course it would work this way. And to people receiving it, they're like, this is broken. So we have some technology called SPA, Smart Persistent Airflow. All it means essentially is that the humidifier won't shut off if there's still water in the system. The reason that we have this baked into the humidifier is because if you leave standing water in a humidifier, it's going to get moldy, right? So if you walk over to your humidifier and the tank's half full and you turn the humidifier off, a couple minutes later, it's going to turn itself back on. And this is essentially a cleanliness defense mechanism, right? Like if you leave this sitting, things are going to get moldy, and they're going to get moldy pretty fast. But the experience that some customers have as a result is, why won't my humidifier turn off? Right? Like it's broken, so I think that is like a really interesting thing. And like, we'll get 1-star reviews for stuff like that. Right. And it's like, this is a challenging, how do you navigate something like that? We had our first 2 years in business, so 2020 and 2021, we sold out of humidifiers right around Black Friday, like right after BFCM, essentially. It led to an immense amount of upset customers, right? NPS score was horrible. It had nothing to do with the user's experience of the product. it had everything to do with people being upset that the humidifier that they ordered is coming 3 weeks later or 6 weeks later than they thought it was going to come to them, right? So there's also work that needs to be done to separate, signal from noise in any of these initiatives as it relates to iterating on product and understanding, okay, here are the things that are actually significant. Here are the things that we can actually effectively impact change on, that don't require us to rebuild the product from scratch or whatever that might be. But I do think that those are tricky situations. It's hard to like say for sure how to handle, but we definitely will go and remove nasty comments from Facebook from time to time if we have to.
I love that. So it sounds like your director of CX has quite the job in not only unifying, probably disparate data sources. You mentioned like finding the signal from the noise. That's a great point, right? Like if a product on Amazon has a bunch of 4-star reviews, but it's because for some reason it's not prime shipping and they thought it was prime shipping. So there could be a number of reasons for why someone leaves not a 5-star review. So never even thought of that before. That's super fascinating. But my point being, with the director of CX needing to unify data, find the truth in that data, what is the process maybe for a leaner team in making decisions on that data? Who is in charge of the final call? And then maybe offer some wisdom for our larger companies out there, right, that may not have the benefit of agility and a lean, close-knit team that could benefit from how you make those decisions.
Yeah, I mean, for smaller companies, I would say in general, most smaller businesses don't have product people in-house, right? They just don't. It doesn't really make sense to have product people in-house. The process of setting up a supply chain is complicated. It takes a long time. The reason Doris Dev exists, though, is because we're firm believers that, especially for early stage businesses, you can fractionalize this work, right? You can bring in experts who do this day in and day out to execute at a high level. So what that functionally looks like on our side of things is, if there is an issue that a client's seeing with their product, the expectation is that they are going to prepare a document for us. They're going to say, hey, these are the number of issues that we see cropping up. It's happened over this period of time so that we can step in and evaluate it. I think that for a lot of teams, the things that are the most glaring issues, like, right? There's a blinking red light there. And whether that is your Instagram comments or whether that is your CX inbox or whether it is the reviews that you're receiving, the major issues generally kind of present themselves pretty apparently. What we do as a result is we gather that data, we make a determination around whether or not this is like truly relevant, right? There are, going back to the Canopy turning itself back on, like, not a real problem. Like, understand that's a messaging issue. And that happens with product all the time, where it's like, this isn't a product issue. This is how we're messaging the product. How do we more effectively message to the consumer, why this is happening the way that it's happening? But leveraging a team like Doris Dev, our engineering team can dive into these issues and say, okay, here's a handful of solutions. Here's the solution that we think is going to be the most impactful. It's going to be quickest, lowest cost, whatever that is. Or maybe not. Maybe it's going to be expensive, but it's going to permanently fix the problem, right? You're going to make a decision like, am I going to make the proper solve, or am I going to put a Band-Aid on a bullet hole, right? There's a lot of different approaches to it. And I think as teams get larger, the larger the company, the more likely they have product people in-house, right? Yeah. So ideally they have these mechanisms in place where the product team is evaluating, hey, here's the defect rate that we have, here are the issues that we see cropping up on a regular basis, and here's what V2 or V3 or V4 is going to look like to address those issues. So, I think that is kind of like the piece of the puzzle, is like there comes a point in scale where, it is appropriate to hire in people to manage product development, to manage suppliers and manage running changes. But it is oftentimes not early, unless you're building something like really complicated and interesting. product people don't generally start the businesses, at least, in the D2C world. It's a lot of marketers and strategists and brand people, that have the vision and the kind of the drive to pull it together. And I think tapping into and leveraging resources that have, deep and specific knowledge in product in particular is going to be the most effective way to actually iterate. There at the end of the day, there's sometimes design happens in a vacuum, right? And if you're not an expert in how to build product, like from a nuts and bolts perspective, like how do you mass produce product at scale, you could dream up a solve that's not practical for one reason or another. So I think that is a key piece of the puzzle. Make sure that you're tapping into the right resources to figure out how to effectively and scalably execute. That's probably the biggest call out.
Yeah, that's super fascinating. It makes a ton of sense. Every company hits a point of maturity where product knowledge goes in-house. What does that look like? When would the Canopy? It's a weird question to ask because Doris Dev and Canopy are so intertwined, right? But hypothetically, right, when would a Doris Dev client become mature enough that it wouldn't make sense, or the product development would go in-house?
I mean, here at the end of the day, Doris Dev is situated the way that we have structured our business. We are a service provider, right? We build retainers on a monthly basis when we're actively engaged with a client, whether that's through design, through new product introduction and supply chain setup, ongoing supply chain management work. That's how Doris Dev gets paid. We're not a trading company. We don't make it so that a client can't go talk to their factory directly. Like, our intent is to be a fractional, like, team member, essentially, right?
Yeah.
We're setting something up for you, we're operating it for you, but the second that you're ready to take that in-house, you absolutely can. Our partners are signing contracts directly with the suppliers that are mass producing their goods, right? There's no iron curtain that they don't get to see behind. Over time, ideally everyone graduates from Doris Dev. Like, all the clients that come through the door reach a level of scale where it becomes appropriate for that to be the case. But there are also other clients that have continued to scale their business and have decided, we don't want to build up product muscle internally. We want Doris Dev to continue to service our business as a partner in the product development process. We have a handful of clients that we've had essentially from day one, right? Doris has been around about 7 years, and there's probably 4 or 5 clients that we've had that entire time, and we'll continue working with them. And we have deep, obviously very deep knowledge of their supply chains at this point. So there's, like, to some extent, there's maybe like an inflection point where the tribal knowledge becomes so intense that it's like, now it's hard for us to bring somebody else on. But yeah, it is. We are designed to be able to hand it all off and let somebody pull it in house. And it also becomes a question of, if you've reached a state where you're no longer innovating or no longer launching new product, that just managing your own supply chains and managing the vendors directly could be, a lot easier for you, right? You don't need to play a game of telephone.
Yeah. That makes a ton of sense to me. Well, Mike, I think the one thing that I took away from this is product design and development is a game of phases. And one thing we like to sort of provide those listening very attuned to how data focused we are is the North Star KPI, right? And it feels like it's really hard to sit here and ask you what is the one unit or metric that you use to define success in product development. If there is, would love to hear it. But I imagine there's like sort of North Star KPIs, once product is in market and, versus when it's in development. Can you share like what your goals are, how you think about success and measure that maybe throughout the stages?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that, maybe more tactically on the Doris level, like, we have a client sentiment survey that goes out every single week. everybody that's on any client fills out a client sentiment survey. So like we do that to like understand, where we're at in the process. Doris takes on a role that is a bit differentiated and nuanced from other agency partners, I think, because we, and I know a good amount about product development, but I'm not an engineer either at the end of the day, right? We have highly technical people doing highly technical work, and translating that to the customer is part of our job, right? So not only are we executing on product development, but we're also educating. So for us, one piece is definitely how's the client feeling about the process, because it is complicated, and we do want to keep our finger on the pulse there. So that's just like an internal metric as we're looking to launch product. And uncertainties present themselves during the process. It can lead to, oh, client's not super happy at the moment. What do we need to do to remedy that? Like, where do we bridge the gap? And I think then as we get deeper into the process, right, the product starts to become more defined. We have we're over the entire process, we're increasing the fidelity of the product to make sure that we're ultimately producing something up to spec and standard that maintains the original design intent and kind of ticks all the feature boxes that we wanted to tick. So as we kind of step into that mass production piece of the puzzle, it's most likely going to be a defect rate, right? Like what percentage of product coming off the line is defective. At the end of the day, no one has a 0% defect rate. Making sure that it's in line with what we would anticipate based on the type of product that we're producing. That's going to be a key metric for us for sure. And then I think as you get deeper in and you have product in market, for me, it would most likely be like an NPS score, because a brand's job is to sell, like, right, to sell you the product. You have a digital flagship, you're selling the dream. The NPS score is a function of the experience that someone has based on the expectations that have been set, right? So if you get sold the dream and you receive a product that's disappointing, I'll give you a specific example. And this is just like maybe me being too deep in the D2C world, but packaging is a big piece of the puzzle, right? Like people invest time, energy, and effort into designing a beautiful unboxing experience. It can make a huge difference in how somebody feels about the product right away.
Yeah.
Canopy, we have this little bag that's like tied in a bow. It's like opening a present when you get it, which is like really nice. And we've gotten a ton of awesome feedback about it. I bought a set of tailor-made golf clubs last year, and it came in a really beat up cardboard box with like foam inserts. And like when I was doing my shopping, I was like, oh my god, look at this dope box that all these people are getting their new set of tailor-made stealth golf clubs in, and I got mine in like a brown unmarked box that was falling apart. And it was like, all right, the product's still great, love my new set of clubs, but like making sure that you're appropriately setting expectations along the entire way, and like is reflected in the NPS score. And I think that getting good product in people's hands is if you're an 8, 9, or a 10 as far as an NPS goes, it's because you really like the product. It's not because you like the dream that got sold to you.
Yeah, that's really great to hear. I think the thing that's most interesting about this line of work is you're quantifying a lot of qualitative human input, right? I mean, defect rate obviously is a quantitative measure, but once it's in market, right, you're just aggregating a lot of human reactions to your product. And I think that, sets up such a different range of challenges compared to the world of digital, where you can say, oh, someone didn't click on this and probably isn't performing, or we're paying too much for impressions, or we're paying too little for impressions. I guess in your role as both marketing and ops, what do you like better? Or is that a really tough question to ask because you like both?
No. I guess what do I like better is more specific to the type of work than like the function, which is I love 0 to 1 work, right? Like one of my favorite parts about Doris Dev is being, on the ground floor, helping founders build product from the ground up, like having an impact there, helping them think through challenges that they don't even know are gonna, present themselves yet because I ran into it on the Canopy side of things, right? Or another client of ours has run into it and we've had a conversation about it, whatever that looks like. So I think it's that piece of the puzzle. It's less like the specific function. It's more like providing value and strategy in the early phases to set up businesses for success to make the process of building scale easier.
How do you think being, on the floor during product development makes you a better marketer too?
That's actually a really interesting question. I I I don't know that it does. Like it might make it might make it worse. And like the reason I say that is because um I think that during a product development process, you get so close to the product that you start to pick up on things that like no one else will ever notice, right? It's just because you've stared at 15 different prototypes, you've tested so many different things, and you run into this situation where you're like, oh my God, is this a big issue? Like, I'm anxious about this thing. And it's like, if you zoom out, if you give the product to another person, you never hear about it, right? So there's like something along those lines. But um, I do think that it can unearth, the product development process can unearth like, oh, I never thought about using it for that, right? Like, oh, that's a really interesting way in here. An added benefit of the product that was not like initially super clear. For Canopy, that was we positioned this thing as a, in the beauty wellness space, and call it 9 months later, kind of split our focus into beauty wellness and new and expecting parents, right? And like that has been a huge unlock, and not something that was like maybe immediately apparent to us. I don't exactly know when we knew we were going to be pulling the trigger on that, but I do think that those are the interesting things. The more time you spend with a product, the more you can be like, oh, how can I like reposition this feature that we know is super valuable? The big one on that side for Canopy was dishwasher safe, right? Parents are busy, they're strapped, they're working full time. A moldy humidifier in their baby's room is their worst nightmare, and having to hand clean a humidifier is also something that nobody's got time for. So, oh, guess what, moms? You can pop this in your dishwasher, and it's like super easy to clean. And then all of a sudden, baby becomes a huge piece of the business. Yeah.
Becomes the next audience defining part of your product. That's cool. Well, Mike, it's been a pleasure to chat with you today. I think you bring such a breadth and depth of knowledge in the space that's definitely uncanny for the space. So appreciate you giving the Don't Be Lookup audience a sense of product development, bringing something into market, and then at the very end here, marketing itself. I think it's a good lesson for specifically our founders and operators who are maybe looking to build a new product, or just those who are entrepreneurial in spirit and have the next great big idea. So everyone, it's Mike. Go check out Doris Dev and Canopy. Canopy is a wonderful humidifier, perfect for the dry months coming up, and that is a plug worthy of recognition. So, Mike, thank you for your time, and looking forward to chatting with you soon.
Yeah, thanks for having me on today.
Cool. Awesome. That was great.
Yeah, dope.
I'm going to stop it.